For today's painting, I'm using a canvas that I haven't used before, and that is the Fredrix Blue Label canvas. This is the ultra smooth, so the texture is very, very soft, making it perfect for little details and for delicate brushwork. And today I am using a 16 by 20 inch, but you can do this on any size of canvas you like. So to get started, I'm going to use my 1/2 inch flat. I wet it in my jar a little and then just wiped it loosely on a paper towel. I'm going to use matte medium. You don't have to if you don't want to. The first thing I'm going to do is just start sketching out my books, and I'm using Payne's Gray. You can use any color you like. I like to use the Payne's Gray because it's a very soft color, and if it happens to show in my painting, I'm okay with that. I'm just going to sketch in kind of a shelf, roughly about an inch, inch and a half from the bottom of the canvas. And I am kind of basing this on an image I found on Pixabay, but really it's just based on that image, and then I'm doing everything else out of my head. But if you want to download the image that I'm loosely basing this on, it's in the video description below. The link is. Now my tallest book, I think I'll have be right about here. And you want to make sure that you're getting, you know, the spines or the whatever, the sides of the books. Make sure that both of the sides are evenly spaced. So what I mean is this is angled that way. So that means this one has to be angled the same. We'll get another book right about in here. So I'm kind of looking at that image just to get an idea for where my books are, how they're situated with each other. See, I'm being pretty general with it here. As I start to fill everything in, I can make adjustments. We're kind of coming around to books that are a little bit more in front of us. So I'm going to reduce the angle on these a bit. And in doing so, I'm shortening it, and that makes it look like it's facing us a bit more. So if it's facing us, you don't want these edges to go clear up like that. That's going to look weird. When it's angling away from us, you do want a little bit of a longer side. Just kind of look at, you know, proportions and directions of things, and you'll kind of start to pick that up. And mine may not be, you know, perfect, but that's okay, because I don't like the word perfect anyway. I do like that little shorty book that's in my image, but I think I'm going to save some room for it. Let's put a nice large book right here. Maybe we can just barely see those edges there. Get kind of a little narrow one in here. I think this is where I want kind of that brighter book. You know, you want one that's kind of the book that's calling attention to itself. Let's whiten it a little bit. And I like in that image that I'm using, there's one book that's kind of a bright color. So that's kind of what I'm going for there. I'm just moving it to the other side. A little bit of a taller book. Let's see, maybe right there. We gotta do the little bits here. And if it's easier for you to, you know, print out this image and trace it or apply a grid to it, do whatever you have to do. You know, if you're not comfortable with the proportions of the books, you know, the way things should be angled, do what you have to do to get it on your canvas. It's not cheating, you know. People tell me all the time, oh, I cheated, I traced it, or I did this, or I did that. It's not cheating. Let's see, I'm not going to put that one right up against that book. just to make it look like it's kind of, let's see, we'll make it go off the edge, poking forward a bit more. Every couple of these will kind of pull it down above the, or over the edge of the bookshelf there. Okay, now that I have my books blocked in, I'm going to start just kind of finding the colors. And so to start with that, I have a couple of browns and quinacridone, and I have burnt sienna and burnt umber. So I think I'm going to take some burnt umber. Maybe I'll throw a little burnt sienna in there. Matte medium, and I'm just going to kind of start just roughly filling these in. If you don't have matte medium or you don't want to use it, you can go ahead and use water here, and it's okay if you use so much water that your paint underbinds, because this is just the underpainting for these, and I'm probably going to end up painting them, you know, with pretty much the same colors. And even if not, it's okay if some of this picks up and blends in with the next paint if I underbind it. It's all going to be painted over, so it doesn't matter. I think that's a good color for that one. I'm going to go just a little darker on the burnt umber, sorry, for the side here. Since it's not facing us, it might be a little bit more in shadow. We'll just run that down the edge there a bit. There. See, I'm being very loose with this. Let's go a little more burnt sienna. And I think this one, just mostly burnt sienna. And you can really play around. I think this is going to be a really fun painting for playing around. You know, kind of like in the Seaside Meditation, how we made each of the rocks different. We gave each rock its own personality with its shape and size and colors and different textures. We can really do the same thing here with these books. Each book can have its own, you know, kind of age patina. I want these books to appear to be quite old. I think I want one of these books to be kind of an emerald green blue. And so the perfect way to do that, I feel, is some burnt umber and some phthalo blue. Just, it's the most gorgeous color. Nice and dark. And maybe we'll have this one be that color. Look at that color. Isn't that beautiful? Look at that. The canvas is so smooth. The coverage is incredible. I typically use canvases that have, you know, a much heavier texture, much more tooth to them. So this is quite a unique experience for me. I'm enjoying it. Clean brush. This is the one that I want quinacridone. So I'm going to grab some burnt umber, mix it with my quinacridone. Just get a very dark version. I might throw a little Payne's Gray in there too. If it has a nice dark base to it, that will really help the brighter quinacridone stand off later. And maybe give us a little bit of that luscious kind of velvet texture. Honestly, I'm building this entire painting based on that book and that image. I love how velvety it looks. And I have no plan for this painting, you guys, seriously. I don't know, you know, any of the colors or textures or anything that I'm going to do on here. I'm just making it up as I go along. Like I said, loosely basing it on that image. But This is another one that you guys are watching me do for the first time. Just kind of playing and having fun with it. Let's get some more burnt umber and mix it with some Payne's Gray. Just a very dark color. Maybe we'll fill in this book here. It's kind of a nice dark sepia color. I like that. Yeah, see, my paint's a little wet, but I'm not worried about it. I know I usually preach to you to not underbind your paint, but like I said, because I'm going to be painting over these again, it doesn't matter if I pick this color up. I got a little bit of cadmium yellow. I'm going to get my burnt sienna, maybe just a hint of that. I'm going to want some books that are a little on the golden side. So that's kind of what I'm building here. Let's make this one a nice bright colored book. It's probably going to end up kind of picturing it being a little off-white, kind of like an old leather. I like that color. Let's give that same base color to our larger book. This one over here. And just because I'm giving it the same base color doesn't mean it's going to end up being the same color after, you know, after we're done. It's all going to depend on the colors I put on top and the texture and, you know, all of that. And this canvas is seriously smooth. If you guys don't like the toothy canvases like I usually use, if you find that you have a really hard time getting paint coverage on those, you might like something like this. And the Blue Label canvases are really nice canvases. These are their high-end canvases. They're really, really quality. Maybe we'll make the sides of this one a little bit darker. Keep in mind when you're looking at images of books, pay attention to what you can and what you can't see. You know, depending on how a book is angled, you might or might not see both sides of the cover. Like on this one, I didn't put the other side because I can't see it the way it's angled and the height of the book. Sometimes you may not be able to see, you know, any of the sides at all, depending on how high the book is and how it's angled. And just pay attention to things like that when you're drawing your books. It may feel weird not to draw one of the sides when you know it's there, but if you don't see it, don't do it. I think I'm going to go pretty light again. I think I want this book to be almost white, but I still need, you know, a base color to work on. I can just barely see that. Okay, there's the underpainting for our books. I want to let this dry and then we'll come back and we'll start doing some texture on them. All right, this is pretty much dry and I stood back and looked from it and I realized that I really like the perspective on these books here. This one is way off. This book is taller than this one. From my perspective, if I can't see the top of this book, then there's no way I'd see the top of this book. So I need to fix this one, but I'm not worried about it. It's not a big deal. What I'm going to do is just kind of pick one of the books, and I think I'm going to drill into it and just really get some of the texture going. And I think maybe I want to start on this book here, on the darker book, sticking with my 1/2 inch flat. I'm going to get some burnt umber, a good amount. I want to work in this paint a little bit on the heavier side than what I typically do. And I'm going to mix it in with some Payne's Gray or Mars Black, whatever you're using. If you're using Mars Black, just don't use quite as much of it. It's much, much stronger. You'll just have a solid black book, and that won't be very interesting. I have a good amount of paint in my brush. See that? It's a little bit glopped, not like I usually do. And I'm going to start kind of laying that in. I'm going to use very loose brush strokes. Can you hear Mr. Moon out there yelling? Maybe I'm going to throw a tiny hint of, this is unbleached titanium. You could use just regular white if you like. I like the unbleached because it just gives a bit more of an antiqued look. It's not quite so bright as titanium white. See, I'm using very angular brush strokes. You can come back and break it up a little if you need to. I'm not really following any of the books in the image anymore. I might look at it from time to time just to get some ideas for, you know, the kind of textures or whatever I want to see on here. But for the most part, I'm just laying this in however I feel is best for that book at that moment. Because I haven't painted the background or the tabletop or the bookshelf top, whatever it is, I haven't painted that yet. I can still make adjustments to the shapes of all of these books. Let's get just a hint of that color and just kind of touch it through there. I can't see a ton of the top of this book, just a little bit. Cleaned off my brush. I'm gonna get some burnt sienna and maybe a little of this unbleached. Let's see, let's get a little more than that. And I'm gonna give it like a little spot where a label might be. And do you notice how my brush stroke is arced just a little bit? It kind of does that just ever so slightly. Just to get the idea that the book, you know, has some thickness to it. A lot of times the spines are kind of curved. Maybe let's give it just a little bit of some worn areas. So I'm gonna get a hint of Payne's Gray. Mix it in here. Some little worn bits. And where the leather is split a little. Just kind of touch and let what sticks stick. We can come back and change any of it in a little bit, but I think that that's a good start. Kind of like that, just a hint at that lighter color there. And then smooth that line out. Totally optional here, but I'm gonna go to my number 8 Bright, and I have some gold. This is the Liquitex Gold. I'm gonna get a decent amount of it, just kind of on one side of my brush. And I'm gonna hold my brush really far back, and we'll just make some indications that there's some kind of markings on the book. There's no reason we have to get in here and get detailed with that. Maybe we've got a title kind of right in here. Just kind of sketch some of that in a little here and there. And not all of them have to have this. I think I'm just going to do it on a couple of them. If you want to get really fancy and like write actual book names, you could. I feel like with the really loose brush strokey style on here that might look kind of out of place. But I mean, you can do it however you like. Maybe I'll get a little Payne's gray. I cleaned off my brush. Just kind of come in and do a little bit along with it. Kind of makes it look like maybe it's embossed or something. Just dashing in a little of that dark. Let's keep with that. Actually, I like that Payne's gray. I'm just coming in here and dashing a bit of it along this back edge. I've kind of decided this back edge is where the book is taking some shadow. Maybe it's this edge that's a little bit brighter. So just kind of streak a bit down and then break it up with really light pressure. Not too bad. I'm going to run just a hint of that under these brown lines. I did the lighter color at the top, and I think the darker color at the bottom kind of helps say that now this little bit, this orangey bit is maybe, you know, where the spine is kind of, you know, they have the textures on them sometimes where it's kind of, it has little bulges. So it's kind of one of those little bulges on the spines. I apologize sometimes that I don't know the technical terms for things, and so I just make up my own little words. I hope that that's not overly confusing for you guys. I just make up words as I go. That's pretty good. See how I'm holding my brush? It forces me to get really loose with it and to not, you know, push too hard and not get real managey with my brush strokes, meaning I don't, you know, start really like micro focusing on each brush stroke, because I can't. I'm really just lay it down and then kind of move it around a little bit. And I'm not unhappy with how this book is looking. Not too bad at all. Just keeping this Payne's gray along this back edge. I cleaned off my brush again, and now I'm actually, because I liked that with that darker, so I'm going to get some of my unbleached. Again, you can just use regular titanium white if you like. I'm going to mix it with some of this the burnt umber. And maybe we'll do a similar thing over here, but with this color to kind of highlight. That color might have been just a little light, but I'll just grab a bit more burnt umber and that will help kind of pull it in. There we go. I am using matte medium. I don't know if I said. I probably did. But anyway, I'm using matte medium, but it's just because that's how I like to paint. Matte medium, I can't foresee doing anything in this painting where matte medium is going to be required. So only use it if you really want to. If you're like me and you love to use matte medium. See, just streak that, get it where you want it to be. Streak the other way, maybe a little matte medium there. Streak the other way just to move it, break up any lines that you don't want. Lay it where you want it. Very light pressure to break it up. I'm not really going to put any down here because it's the bottom of the book. I feel like it's a little darker down there anyway. I'm going to put a hint right here. I didn't really like those white bits, the off-white bits that I did for texture. I didn't like that, so I'm okay covering that up. Let's get just a bit of that brighter color right up here on this. Actually, I'm going to go a little bit brighter even on this top edge. That's the top edge of the spine. And then maybe we'll put a little bit of that also right here. If you're one of those people who you don't have all the time in the world to paint, you get to paint a little bit at a time, I think this could be a really good painting for that. You know, we have so many books on here, and really you can have as many books as you want. You could have 3 books, 2 books, 1 book, 80 books, however many you feel like you have time for. But if you only get time to paint, you know, here and there, a couple times a week or once a day, once a month, whatever it is, this could be a good painting for that, you know? One day, sketch out your books and block in your base colors like we did to start out. The next day, come back and start working on one of your books like I'm doing here. Do 1 book a day. I'm just popping little bits of this brighter color here and there. And I'm still really doing that hash mark, you know, kind of down, side to side. I think it helps break it up and just make sure everything's got a little bit of texture. I might even take just a hint of it over here. Just a hint. Blend it out with some solid burnt umber if I need. Let's go a little bit lighter right here. And I am pretty dang happy with this book so far. I might come back to it later on and make some adjustments, but right now I'm pretty happy with it. I know I keep saying I'm done with it, but then I keep standing back and thinking, oh, I need a little bit more right there. These are very, very loose brush strokes. Not quite abstract, but probably a little bit impressionist. That was a bit aggressive. There we go. And if it's super aggressive and my paint is super thick, then I'm just gonna let it dry and come back to it later. But I am gonna move on from it right after I do this. Okay, I've decided I want to move on to this one, and for now I'm going to stick with my 1/2 inch, and I'm going to make it kind of a white, leathery, really patinaed old book. So I'm going to get some unbleached, and I'm going to mix it with some burnt sienna, maybe a little cad yellow to warm it up, maybe a little Payne's gray, just to make it a little less vibrant. That cad yellow is so vibrant. I don't want it that vibrant. There we go. Yeah, I like that color. If color mixing like that, you know, the way I just kind of pulled colors in, if that seems, you know, kind of magical to you, you know, knowing which colors to use, or, you know, choosing colors, I encourage you to just play around with colors and learn what they do when you mix them together. In fact, in August, my Patreon group and I were doing a color mixing challenge, so that's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to do a lot of really fun projects that, you know, just focus on picking up some colors and seeing what happens when you mix them together, because enjoying that process and just playing with it, it really teaches you so much. You can learn so much about color mixing just from, you know, being curious and saying, well, let's see what happens when these 2 colors get mixed together. What happens if I mix these 4 colors together? You know, the more you know about your colors, the stronger of an artist you'll be. I think I'm going to throw a little more of that burnt sienna in. I'm going to start kind of working on the texture and kind of color differences. So we'll kind of plop that down, and I think I'm going to end up using my finger a lot on this book. I'm kind of basing it loosely on one of the books in the reference image. I just like the real smeary look of the patina. So it's a little Payne's gray and burnt sienna. Let's put it down here maybe. Let's throw a little bit cad yellow into that. And, you know, maybe a little bit of pure white. There. Just don't overwork your colors. Don't over blend them. And just kind of laying them down and then tapping out any brush lines. I may let it dry a bit and then come back later, but for now I'm just going to throw in a bit more of this bright color, just here and there. Maybe just a little bit of white in there. Just like in the dark brown book, I'm going to go to my number 8 bright, and I think I'm going to get, let's see, I'm going to get some Payne's gray Maybe I'll mix it with the burnt sienna just so it's not, you know, the Payne's Gray will look black against that book, and I don't want it to look black. I want it to look dark. So I'm going to get just a little bit of that. Maybe I'll pick up a little bit of my unbleached titanium on the other side. And I'm going to do a similar thing just in like 1 or 2 spots on here to say that there's some kind of writing on there. But it's all very suggested. It's writing or decoration or something. Maybe we'll have one up here as well. Yeah, and then I think I'll just let that dry on the face, and I'll come back and do a little bit more with the texture. In the meantime, I'm going to take a bit of that color with some white in it and just kind of plop down a highlight at the top edge here toward the back. Maybe just a bit right there. All right, I'm going to move on to this one, and I got some burnt umber, and I have my burnt sienna. Just randomly deciding what colors I'm going to use. This one I want it to look like old crinkly leather, I think. Maybe we'll pull it out ahead of this dark one next to it by giving it a bit of a darker spot right here. We'll say that we can see the side of the book just a little bit. If they all sit really flush, you know, the faces of them are really flush to each other, I think it starts to look a little flat. So as I go, I am going to decide, you know, this one's ahead of this one, or kind of tucked behind this one a bit. So let's just add a bit of Payne's Gray to the bottom of that. And maybe we'll do that same dark color right there. And then let's kind of brighten up the front, maybe a little bit of the cad yellow. Let each of these books have a completely different personality. Just completely different. I think I'm actually going to mix a little bit of the gold in with this. We'll see what happens. Maybe I will end up not liking it. Maybe it won't really show. But you never know until you try. Don't be afraid to try things. See, I know it might kind of seem like I wasted my time with the underpainting since I'm just covering it all up, but it did a couple of things. It helped me plan where I want to put the colors. It gave me a bit of an idea for that. But also, see, some of these colors I'm using are quite transparent, and I put it on, but I can still see the underpainting below it. The color glows through, or, you know, the brush strokes glow through. And if I were just painting some of these delicate colors just on top of white, I would probably struggle with that a bit. So underpainting always helps, even if you feel like ultimately after the fact that you could have gotten away without it. Sometimes it's just easier and, you know, makes the whole process more enjoyable if you do an underpainting. I'm not seeing a lot of this gold right now, but I don't dislike what it's doing, so I'm going to keep doing it. And we'll just see what happens. I'm just picking up some of that gold. The gold is, you know, it's optional. All of these colors are optional. I just want you to use whatever colors you have and like. And I know I say that every single time, and every time I still get people who they want the exact same color that I have, or you know, they can't get it, they can't find it, they want to know how to mix it, or if it's okay to use this color instead. And the answer is always yes. Use what you have, use what you like. You're not wrong if you use something different. The colors I'm picking are not the right colors. This painting is pretty much coming out of my head. I mean, I used the photo for a bit of a reference on positioning, and I'm paying attention to some of the textures in it, but I'm not trying to recreate that photo. I just grabbed colors that I thought would look good on books. And that's what I want you to do. So if you don't have any of these colors, please just use what you have. It will be just fine. Any colors you have will be perfect. So you're just kind of nudging some Payne's gray and some gold and just back and forth. And I kind of like that, but I want to get a little highlight. Even if you want a book to be dark, you will need to put some highlight in there. You know, just like this book here. This is going to be my darkest book. It's going to be a very dark book. But look at how light I went. That's almost pure unbleached titanium white. You have to have light to show off the dark. And vice versa. If you want something to appear white, you got to give it some shadows. Just laying down some of that unbleached. I'll just kind of texturize it a bit by tapping that. Just get a little blop of, there we go. Ooh, I like that. Yeah, I'm gonna keep doing that. So basically just some unbleached or plain old white. Run a soft amount of it. It's not heavy. I've got some matte medium in there to kind of break it up. Just kind of tap that around a little. Maybe come back and get a little bit of a bigger blob, and there. Ooh, it's almost like a little worn spot where the book is starting to separate. I like that. Maybe we've got some on the other side. Right over here. Yeah, I like that a lot. And I don't think I'm going to put any text or, you know, any indication of text on this book. But I do want to get just a hint of a highlight right back here, especially at the top edge. Let's go nice and bright at the top here. I've cleaned off my brush, a little bit of Payne's gray, a little bit of burnt umber. Let's get just some of those darker colors. I'm pretty much going to do a very similar thing to what I just did with the unbleached, but with this darker color. So let's take a thin amount of it, just in a couple of places. Kind of just tap to break up the line. There. I like the way that book is looking. I'm just going to get a good amount of gold. This is just kind of, you know, maybe the book has a little bit of a gold stain rubbed into it. Or it just appears to have a bit of brightness. Oh, the one last thing that I wanted to do on there is get that dark color again. And I want to kind of take a bit of it just behind these little breaks. Just kind of nudging it in there. I'm not drawing a hard line behind it. If it sticks, it sticks. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I feel like that kind of makes it look like the binding where it's torn is kind of curled back a little bit. Okay, let's work on this book. I'm really excited to work on this color. Still using my 1/2 inch for now, and I'm gonna get some of my burnt umber, mix it with my phthalo blue, a good heavy amount, maybe a little bit heavier than, you know, than what I usually use, so that we can come in here and just say, you know, get that full coverage. And yeah, seriously, the smoothness of this canvas is really, really impressive. I'm so used to, you know, the heavy texture. And that's why I like the red label canvases, because they have a, you know, they have a medium texture, so I really like that. But there's something to be said for painting on a smooth canvas too. I'm gonna mix a little bit of unbleached in there, and look at how it makes that jewel tone color just pop. Love, love, love that color. Let's just keep going. Sometimes I'll add some of the white, sometimes not. I'm just trying to create some variation. Just don't want a real solid color on here. And again, with that kind of arced shape, some of the books can have very flat spines, but some of them should have those kind of curved spines. And you can determine which that, you know, which is which. Like the leather books that I did, well, I mean, I imagine if they're old books, they're probably all leather. But the two that I did to make them look like older leather, at least one of them I feel like is going to have kind of a flat spine, and the other one might have a little bit of a curve to it, but just to illustrate that I'm doing them each differently. There we go. Along the cover at the back, I'm just going to take some of this dark color Ooh. Got it on my other book. Oh well. It doesn't matter. I'm not gonna freak out about it. I just cleaned my brush off and I'm just gonna clean that up a little bit. I know I haven't finished this book, so I can make any adjustments to it that I need to. I really like that unbleached in there, so I think I'm gonna throw a bit more in. And then I have an idea for how I want to make this spine look. Keep it kind of dark down here. Darker, but not, you know, dark, dark. Just kind of back onto those little hash marks, you know, side to side, up and down. Now I'm going to get some more of that unbleached and kind of like what I did on the dark book, kind of lay that down and then gently swipe it over. I'm just gonna wipe that off on my brush. I don't need to clean it for this part. I'm gonna go back into my brown and my blue and get that dark color again. We're just gonna make sure that there's a little bit of a shadow under it. Remember, to make something absolutely look like it has texture, you wanna have light and dark right next to each other. Back to my number 8 bright. And I'm just going to kind of play around with those mixtures, a little bit of a lighter color. Just breaking it up. Just went right into my unbleached. It's kind of an odd angle. let's run a hint of that in a couple places along the edge. Again, it just kind of gives it that worn look. And it helps separate the edge of the book here from the spine. That's all dry, so I just picked up a little bit of my darker color to blend it in. But see, you don't even have to run it all the way down the whole edge. You can leave bits of it without any of that lighter color. Just put it in a couple of places and that will be enough to let the viewer know that they're looking at the edge of the book. And I think the gold is going to look so good on here. But you could do silver, copper, you could pull any colors you like in. I'm just going to keep it simple. Just do a little bit of the gold. We'll highlight up there on the top edge and the top edge here. Maybe not a lot here, just a hint of it. I'm going to load up with a little bit of that dark color. Just a little bit. I'm wiping a lot of it off. I don't want any globs of it. And I'm going to grab some gold. See how I'm just nudging it in where that paint is wet. And if I get a bit that I feel like is too much, I can just flip my brush over to where that gold isn't and, you know, tame it down a little. And if that doesn't work, then I can just wait until it's dry and come back then. It is enough to just suggest that there's writing there. Let's just kind of make this one a little bit more ornate. I think that's looking pretty good. All of these books, I think I'm going to come back and do a little bit of touch up on. But that's good for now. Okay, let's work on this book. And I kind of get the idea that I want this to be like a white book. You know, you see those big, huge old books and they're like in white leather. That's kind of what I'm seeing here. So with my 1/2 inch, I'm going to get a bit of burnt sienna and some unbleached. And remember, just because a book is white doesn't mean we want to paint it pure white. We want to give the impression that it's a white book. And sometimes we do that by putting colors in there, making it a little bit darker than white. So I've just kind of got this off-white, tan type color. There's no white, no pure white anyway, in my brush here. Not yet. I'll use a little bit. And again, I'm separating it from the side. I'm not painting in the side of the cover, the back flap. That will be right here. We'll do that a little bit different so that we can tell that it's the side and not the front. for now, I'm gonna leave it. Let's get a little bit of white now. I didn't clean off my brush. Maybe I will mix maybe the tiniest point of burnt umber, just because the burnt sienna is very, very warm. The burnt umber is a little bit cooler, and I think the contrast might be nice. So we'll start laying in some of this white. Again, it's not pure white, and it's mixing with those other colors that I put on there. Never be afraid to experiment and, you know, find what you like. Let's go ahead and do that side cover now. So I just got some burnt umber. Still have all those other colors in my brush, but I mixed this color just a little bit darker, well, a little bit more of the burnt umber than what I did with the white on the front. Let's see, that might be too light. I think that's too light. Let's go a little bit more. That's better. Burnt umber is good for shadows, you know, especially if you're using colors like burnt sienna. If you're using burnt sienna, that's a very warm color. Burnt umber is much cooler compared, so burnt umber makes a good shadow color for a warm color like burnt sienna. And I haven't done that pink book yet, the quinacridone book. I know that's the one that I'm really excited to do. I really want to do that one. So that's why I'm saving it until the end, because it's going to feel like my reward. I like to save, you know, the intense details, but also the part of the painting that I really want to do. I like to save those kind of things for the end because it feels like a little bit of a reward. All right, I'm just going to pick up some white. Haven't cleaned off my brush. And let's get some of those little, you know, textury, highlighty bits. I might have to let this book dry. The paint is quite thick. I am going to do it much more simple though, I think. I'm not going to get fancy with it like I did the blue book, in other words. I think I'm going to let it dry for a bit. All right, I'm going to start working on this one, and I think I'm going to do this one kind of similar to the way I did this one, but I think I'll do the color just a little bit different. So some burnt umber. Oh, I picked up a little too much water there. And maybe a little bit of burnt sienna in with that. And some Payne's gray. It's important not to get impatient and feel, you know, like everything is really repetitive. For me, that's kind of an easy thing to do, to, you know, start to feel bored because it's repetitive, you know, painting book after book. And I can tend to, you know, kind of start rushing through things. And I don't want to do that. I'm actually going to change this. I want the spine to end right there. So we'll give a little bit of an edge. Say that magenta book is going to be pushed back just a little bit. I think that's what I'm going to do. I do tend to be kind of an impatient person sometimes, and I'm working on that. So this will be a good opportunity for me to work on that. Right. Keep an eye on your books. You know, if you feel like they're starting to get misshapen, just correct them. That's why I'm not like really working a book to completion before moving on. If I were to do one book to completion and then start on the book next to it, I might decide, oh, I need to make a change to this book, and then, you know, then I have to go back and make a change to the book that I already completed. Just a little bit of a lighter color. And we'll get some of this in there. Just kind of an old leather look. Some lighter colors, some darker colors, just variations. Maybe some of this gold. I put some of that gold in the other book and I really liked it. It was a very subtle look. But I feel like it did what I wanted it to do. Just kind of age the books a little bit more. Let's go ahead and do the side. So some Payne's gray, my burnt umber. I think I'll keep a little bit of burnt sienna in there. remember that edge. I said that I wanted to pull that edge into the side here, so I need to remember to make it the same color. There we go. I'm going to throw a little bit more Payne's Gray in there at the bottom. Oh, I kind of like that really dark in there. I think I might want to see a little bit of that, just in bits on the front. Yeah, I like that. Let's do some of that over here. My Payne's Gray is starting to dry out. I'm really taking my time with this today. So I'll paint a bit and then take a break and come back. And I find that that really helps me stay focused in a painting. You know, if I can do a bit of it and then take a break and not think about it for a minute. But if I had to paint all of these books, just one right after the other with no kind of break, I'm pretty sure I'd get very impatient and, you know, kind of start to not pay as much of attention and not give each book the time that I need to get it to look the way I want it to. I just mixed whatever color that was on my brush in with a little bit of unbleached. Again, just getting those kind of worn edges. Just a hint of it down here. But maybe I do want like a good, you know, like a little bit of a rip in the cover down toward the bottom. I don't really have anything that's got, you know, some wear texture right down here. It's being slid in and out of the bookshelf quite frequently. That might happen. Just think about the story that each one of these books has to tell. And I don't necessarily just mean the contents of the book. But you know, if it's an old book, it's probably been around for a while and it's seen some things. It's, you know, been used by maybe hundreds or thousands of people, and every time somebody touches the book, it picks up just a little bit more wear, a little bit more, you know, it gains a little bit more of its own identity from all of the other books. And you get to decide what that looks like on your books. I'm just going to add a hint of this in here. Just don't want it to be flat, and you know, just because it's the side that we're not really seeing doesn't mean it needs to be flat and boring there. And just a hint of dark right here where it kind of opens. You know, there's usually a bit of a dip there. I like that. Maybe this book has one little gold emblem on it. Let's say maybe just kind of right in here. I do feel like if we take just a hint of dark and put it around that gold. It gives it a little bit more of that embossed look and, you know, makes it just a little bit more realistic. See, just along the side of it there. Maybe a little bit under. All right, let's work on this book. Okay, I'm gonna use some burnt sienna, maybe a little bit of my cadmium yellow. Change it up just a little bit there. And I think a bit of unbleached. And a little bit of Payne's Gray, again, just to kind of dampen the colors a little bit. There. Give them a little bit more of a vintage look, not quite so bright. Now this book, remember I said that I did not ultimately like the way I did this area up here. I don't feel like I'd see much, if any, of that. So we're gonna change all of that. I just grab some burnt umber with some burnt sienna there. And then just dashing those colors together. I'm not worrying about a perfect blend, just dashing them together. Little matte medium or water, whatever you're using. Just getting super messy, getting whatever color it is that I get. Sometimes I like the, you know, it's exciting to just kind of see what happens with your color, to not worry about it. You know, there's a lot of people who, you know, will mix their colors beforehand because they want a very specific color. They want, you know, a very consistent color. That is just not me. I like to just take it as it comes. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. I mean, I'm using all the same colors that I started using, just in different mixtures. And so it all works together. You know, if I were just going from color to color on my plate and just picking up completely random colors for this book, it would probably not turn out the way I wanted it to. But I'm not doing that. A little more burnt umber. My brush is so gunked up with color right now, and I like that. Tiny drop of Payne's. And I'm going to reshape this cover. That. I think that will be better. Yep, I think that looks better. It looks really strange right now because of the other bits behind it that I put in there in the first place, but once I paint in the background, it'll be fine. A little bit bit more Payne's Gray just for right in here, just to really darken that. I'll use my number 8 bright to get in there properly in a little bit. Let's just keep that dark color and just add some little shadowy areas. I've not cleaned off my brush at all since I started this one, so it still has all of those same colors on it. All right, this paint is starting to dry, so it's getting a little strange. So I'm gonna leave it and I'll come back to it in a bit. All right, I am ready to work on the one that I'm really excited about. So I have some quinacridone and I'm gonna get a little bit of Payne's Gray and quinacridone. I'm really excited about this book. I've been excited about this book. The idea of doing this bright, velvety book was what I really wanted to do, you know, in doing this whole painting. That was kind of what called to me in it. So I am gonna take my time with it. I'm gonna make sure that it's the one that is really eye-catching when you come to this painting. The dark here is really going to help make the bright quinacridone stand off and be really exciting. If I just painted it, you know, bright magenta, it would look flat, it would look boring, it wouldn't look velvety, and I really want it to look velvety. I'm not really mixing these colors too well on my brush. I'm just kind of picking them up. So they're a little streaky, and that's what I like. That's why I'm doing it. I'm going to get a little bit of titanium white. Unbleached could be good too. It would just kind of tame it down a little bit. I am picking up a little bit of that Payne's Gray in here, and that's okay. I just want this color to be a little bit lighter. And we'll just kind of start finding the shape and the texture here. Like these little ridges that we've been doing on some of the books. So I'm going to keep doing that a bit. Yeah, I think this one and the blue one, the green, you know, kind of aqua one, are going to be the books that you really look at in this painting. And that's why I placed them where I did. So especially the magenta one here, it's placed right about in the 1/3 line of the canvas. So if I break my canvas into sections, equal sections, you know, 3 equal sections, this is on one of those lines. And that is one of the kind of concepts that helps you know where to place your interesting elements in composition. Is, you know, place something on the 1/3 line. So this one's placed on the 1/3 line, and the blue one is pretty close. It's not right on the 1/3 line, but it's not the one I want you to look at quite as much as this pink one. This is my focus, for me anyway. You can make your focus book any color you like. I would just make sure that whatever color that is, that somehow it stands out from everything else. You know, if you have, let's say all of your books are black or very, very dark brown, something, and you have one book that is quite a bright, light color, very pale white, off-white, gold, something like that. Something that is going to be different. My books are all pretty much in the same kind of color scheme, you know, they're all kind of brownish, leathery looking. And then I've got this bright pink one that is going to look a little bit more fabric-y, a little bit more, you know, fancy than some of the other ones. See, I'm not trying to blend anything. It's just all about laying down the color and then breaking it up somehow. Let's get that all the way down to there. We don't want these little ridges, the little texture bumps to be separate. You know, if you don't take your colors and textures down all the way, then those are going to seem like they're kind of floating in outer space, and it's going to be weird. So a bit of it there. And I'm going to streak out the line up here with my finger. And again, notice I'm really only streaking out the top line. The bottom line can be a little bit more solid. So that's where it meets the shadow. But this top line, if you just blend your highlight ever so slightly, just smear it, I think that helps give you the look of the texture rather than just a line. We're trying to say that pokes out farther than everything else. And I think I might have to let this book dry just like the other ones before I can really finish up. The paint's pretty thick. Just gonna get this a little bit farther over to the side. Okay, now I'm going to start kind of working on some of the details, touching up, finishing up the couple of books that I really didn't do a lot to. And to start, I think I want to work on this book. I feel like it's just about done, but I want to add some kind of splattery, streaky edge to it. So I'm going to take a piece of paper and I'm going to put a piece of tape on it, hold it up so that it covers everything else. because I don't want to splatter a bunch of paint on anything else. Don't stick your tape to anything that's wet. If you need to let it dry, let it dry. All right, my 1/2 inch flat has a little extra water in it, and I'm gonna get some burnt sienna. It's pretty thick. See, it's not running, but it is wetter than what I would typically use. And I'm gonna splatter. I'm not worried about getting it up into here. Just smear some of that. Okay, mix up a little more, and this time it is a little bit runnier, and I'm getting more of it. Now, I've had people say that when they splatter like this, they get paint everywhere, and I think that if that's happening, your brush is too far away. I know it's hard to see, but here, my brush is about 2 finger widths from the canvas. There's that much distance between my brush and the canvas. And see, you can see where it's going on here. It's going a little bit off to the sides, but it's not getting on my face. It's not flipping on the ceiling. It's, you know, it's just staying right there. I'm even gonna, ooh, yeah. I like that. Now I'm gonna do the same thing with some burnt umber. So just get your brush really close. There we go. A little bit of a dirty patina. This book has been through some things. It is a well-loved book, that's for sure. Not too bad. I'm gonna let that dry before I do the final bit. The final bit, I wanna add a little bit of a shadow down this side because this book I feel like is pulled forward a little bit, would be blocking the light there. All right, onto our white book. I'm using my number 8 bright, some unbleached, some white. And just dashing it in, not trying to cover everything, just giving it a little bit of a whitewash. Being a little bit messier, I guess. I'm changing my brush stroke on this one, and I hope that the reason I'm doing that is not because I'm disinterested in finishing this book properly. I think the reason I'm doing that is just to get a different look. I just want this book to feel a little bit different than the others. So I'm doing a little bit more of kind of a scrubby, a little bit of a scrubby thing. But for the most part, I am still working in that, you know, kind of hash mark pattern. So up and down, left and right. Somehow I managed to pick up a little bit of that quinacridone on my brush. So if you see a hint of that in there, that's why. But I'm not terribly worried about it. kind of lost our little textury, you know, kind of the little bendy bits there, whatever they're called. They probably have a name. And we'll keep that lightness going up here. See, it's a white book, but there's actually very little pure white in it. I'm kind of finishing up with some, but there's a lot of other colors in there. And remember, to make something look brighter, we put something darker next to it. So that ridge that I did there, it kind of doesn't stand out real well, especially on the bottom one. That's because everything around it is so bright. It's really surrounded by very pale colors. So we're gonna do something about that. I'm gonna take a little unbleached, tiniest speck of whatever I can get over there as far as brown goes. There we go. A little bit of a darker color. I'm going to hash mark that in too. Let's get that darker color here where I want that other one to appear. Let's even throw a little bit more just for some real worn, some really worn spots on there. That's what I like. Sometimes it can be scary to go dark enough. But when you let yourself go dark enough, then it's a good thing, and you're glad that you did. Sometimes getting there, though, is scary. My brush has very little paint on it at this point, but I'm just trying to get hints of that color. We'll make the binding on the sides a little bit of a different color. Maybe it's just a little bit darker. It's not white on the sides. Maybe it's only white on the front. don't know why this little section feels so tedious to me right here. So I'm trying not to rush through it. I keep getting the urge to rush through this part because it just feels so tedious. You know, sometimes the parts of your painting that aren't quite as exciting as others, they can feel a little tedious. And there's always parts that aren't quite as exciting, especially if you're doing gridding. And I know a lot of you skip the gridding because it feels tedious to you. See how I'm just running some of that dark right there. Not overly dark, just a little darker to say that's where the cover bends when it's open. And maybe I'll even just pull a bit of it into here because maybe a little bit of a shadow there. A little bit of a highlight right back here where that corner's kind of crushed a little. That's the other thing. Remember, these are super old books, so the corners might be kind of crushed. It might not be real, you know, hard and square. And if they are really hard and square, it's going to kind of make it look like your books aren't quite as old. And that's not a big deal, you know, if you want books that look a little bit newer than the, you know, more sharp edges and regular shapes would be fine. Just touching up a little bit of, I just don't like it one solid color. I like to see something else going on in there. I think I'm about done with this book. It is going to need some text on the front for sure. Or, you know, our little suggested text that I do with the gold paint. Maybe I'll do this one with just Payne's Gray though. A little bit of Payne's Gray. And I'm gonna get a little bit of white on the other side. And we'll just, well, I don't think I want it solid Payne's Gray. I'm gonna mix it with some burnt umber. Solid Payne's Gray on a color that's really light is just gonna look, you know, pure black, and it's gonna be kind of jarring, I think. So opposite to what I did on the other books, I'm gonna get some white. And where on the other books I did black and I put it on this right-hand side, and the bottom I'm gonna do white, and I'm gonna put it kind of at the top and on the left. And then I feel like I'm gonna be about done with this book. I'll look at it and decide. And a heavy amount of white. I want to really pop however I can right there. I don't think it's going to pop too much, but there. Let's add our shadows to this book. I'm going to stick with my number 8, just get some burnt umber, some matte medium, and I'm going to come in here along this edge. That green book is kind of throwing a shadow on it. Pull it out and then just smear it. And I'm not even going to do it real even. Some of it might be stained, not necessarily shadow. Whatever you want to do with it. I like that, and I actually want to do that a bit with some unbleached. Just a little bit. Maybe right up in here. Yeah, I like that. A little bright unbleached right there, and I feel like that book is about done. All right, let's finish up this book. So a clean brush, I'm gonna get my gold, and I'm loosely gonna brush some in here, just the same with those back and forth, up and down. Kind of creating almost like a label. There. My number 8, bright. My Payne's Gray. I am just going to use Payne's Gray this time. And we'll indicate some writing in here. Maybe we'll give just a little bit of a shadow or something right down here. All right, finishing up that side, we have this little bit in here. Whoa, somehow I got a big globber of dried up Payne's Gray on there. Right down the side here, separating these two books. A little burnt umber. Just gonna hash mark it into there. A little sienna. Just to keep it from being solid black. I just need to separate it from this book a little bit more. Little unbleached and my sienna, just for a slightly lighter color that I can, you know, give a bit of a highlight or just kind of a patina or whatever, however you want to interpret it. Right here. A little of a darker color if I need to dash it in, because it was starting to dry. Just hints of it throughout. It's always more interesting when you have, you know, a color that's not unique. So, you know, if I have that lighter color there, I think it's a little less interesting than if I kind of disperse it a bit throughout. It makes it belong there a bit more. There we go. And I want to do a similar thing on the edge of this book and where it meets the side of that other one. So I'm just going to put a bit in here. Man, my paints are really starting to dry out. They're getting all sticky and they're hard to spread around. So see, again, those of you who always ask me how I keep my paints wet, I don't, just like you don't. I have issues with that too. That's just the nature of painting with acrylic paint, you know, it dries. It dries quickly. That's, you know, part of what's exciting about painting with it, and it's part of what's challenging about painting with it. I washed off my brush, a little of this gold to just dash through here. And then we're gonna move on, finish up the magenta book, do the background and the table, and those parts will be fast, the background and the table. All right, number 8 bright. I'm just getting quinacridone. It's pretty transparent, so a lot of those colors will still show up. Some of the dark bits, some of the lighter bits, they'll kind of glow through, but I'm not covering everything. See how I covered that part and you can still see the highlight. Just want to brighten up that pink. Oh, that's okay. Little white. Little bit lighter. one more lighter, and then we're gonna move on. I think I'll be done. Well, I'll be done with the highlights. I do want to do one last thing with the low lights on this book, and then I'm done with it. Nice bright highlight on there. Actually, I was going to take some Payne's Gray along the side there, but I don't feel like I need it. Before we paint in the background and the tabletop, I want to paint in the pages here. And a color that I like for old pages is Payne's Gray and unbleached. More unbleached, obviously, than Payne's Gray. Just gives us a nice kind of old paper look. And I'm not going to be real specific with this. I'm just going to come in and kind of dash it there. That's going to be about good. I can use this to cover up any bits that I didn't like. Change anything. Maybe we'll, every couple of books, we'll change up the color just a little. I just threw a tiny bit of white in there. Because each of the books are going to be a little different, right? This one. Remember this one on the far left, I decided that I can't actually see the pages in there, nor can I see the other cover, so that one is fine. Okay, for the background, I'm going to use Payne's Gray, good amount of Payne's Gray, and a little bit of unbleached. I don't want it to be pure black, but I want it to be, you know, quite dark. There. And Payne's Gray is quite transparent, so if you're using Payne's Gray and you feel like you need to do more than one layer, that's okay. I'm just going to cut in around the shapes that I want to keep. Cover up things that I don't want to keep. And of course, every time I go back for more paint, my color's a little bit different. I might have to go back to my 1/2 inch to finish up. I think I will. Smooth out some of those lines. Gotta get down in here. There we go. I'm going to lighten it up a little as I go to the left, just because I think that's interesting when it kind of changes color. cut off that bit. That was too long, I thought. Came out too far. A little more unbleached, nice and pale as we move this way. I'm going to start covering up these lines. Bye-bye. Okay, for the tabletop or the bookshelf, I want a color that resembles wood but is different from the books. So I'm just going to kind of play with that as I go and see what I like the best. So some unbleached, maybe a little bit of cad yellow, and some burnt umber, a little more burnt umber. That's not too bad. Let's try that, and now I can clean up the shape of these books. Give them very definite shapes on the bottom edges. And remember, part of this is going straight up and down, and part of it's going flat. So use a different color for each. I'm gonna just paint the up and down first. Maybe I'll throw a little more burnt umber in there for that part. There. Yeah, that's the color that I want there. On some of these books, you can see the actual surface they're sitting on. Not just the front of the bookshelf. I'm gonna go to my bright, pull a little more unbleached in there, maybe a tiny, tiny bit more yellow, maybe some actual white, just really looking for that brighter color. I don't need a lot of it, because I'm just gonna come in here and do the surface. See how just changing the color really can make it look like a different surface on a different plane. Much better, and I think I'm done.